It's almost impossible to imagine today, but two of the world's biggest rivals, nations now locked in a dangerous shadow war, were once best friends. I'm talking about Iran and Israel. And this wasn't just some casual political relationship. We're talking secret meetings between leaders, shared intelligence, huge joint projects, the whole shebang. So how in the world did that all fall apart? Let's get into it.
And this really says it all, doesn't it? Look at the difference. On one side, you've got this deep strategic alliance. On the other, well, it's one of the most volatile rivalries on the planet. This is the story of how that incredible partnership just completely devolved into a cold, hard war.
So, yeah, that's the big question we're going to unpack here. What was the trigger? What was that single moment that flipped this entire relationship completely on its head? Well, the answer is buried in the shifting sands of the Middle East itself.
To really get this, we have to rewind the clock, way back. The old Ottoman Empire had just collapsed after World War I, and a whole new Middle East was being drawn up. And in this new reality, both Iran and the brand new state of Israel found themselves as kind of outsiders. They were the non-Arab players in a rapidly changing game. The glue that held this unlikely friendship together? It was a shared threat. The idea of pan-Arab nationalism, pushed by powerful leaders like Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser, was sweeping the region. For the Shah's Iran, which is a Persian nation, and for the Jewish state of Israel, a giant unified Arab bloc was, a pretty scary thought. They were basically two non-Arab islands in a sea of Arab hostility.
So to deal with this, Israel's very first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, came up with a really clever strategy. He called it the peripheral doctrine. The logic was super simple. If the countries right next door to you are enemies, then you should make friends with their neighbors. And if you look at a map, the biggest, most important non-Arab country on that periphery, you guessed it, Iran. And you know what? This strategy started working almost immediately. In 1950, just 2 years after Israel was founded, Iran became only the second Muslim-majority nation to recognize the new state. Now, it wasn't a big, flashy announcement, more of a quiet, de facto nod. Then, a few years later, a CIA-backed coup made sure the Shah's power was secure, which pushed Iran firmly into the Western camp, right alongside Israel. The stage was set. And what came next was pretty much a golden era of cooperation. For the next 3 decades, these two countries built a relationship that was incredibly deep, had tons of different layers, and crucially, was mostly kept hidden from the public eye. I mean, the level of cooperation here was just incredible, especially on the security side. We're talking about Israel's legendary intelligence agency, the Mossad, helping to train the Shah's notorious secret police, Savak. They were constantly sharing intel on their common enemies. Israel was training Iranian fighter pilots, selling them top-tier weapons. They even started working on missile technology together.
And just to give you an idea of how close and how secret this all was, get this. Israel's own Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion would reportedly fly into Tehran wearing a wig, just so he could slip past the media and go meet with the Shah. A wig.
So, how did they manage this in public? Well, they had this delicate little dance. There was no official Israeli embassy with a flag flying out front. No. Instead, there was a big building called the Israeli Trade Office. But here's the thing, everybody knew exactly what it was. It was basically a full-on embassy in everything but name, a classic open secret.
But it wasn't just about spies and military stuff. There was a huge economic angle, and it all centered on this amazing secret pipeline. Okay, so here was the problem. Arab countries were boycotting Israel, so no oil from them. And Iran couldn't easily get its oil to Europe because Egypt controlled the Suez Canal. So their solution? Absolutely brilliant. They co-funded a massive pipeline straight across Israel. Iranian oil tankers would dock in the south, pump the oil across the country, and then ship it out to Europe from the Mediterranean. It was a perfect win-win.
For decades, this alliance looked rock solid, unbreakable. But then, the earthquake hit, the one that shattered everything, the Islamic Revolution of 1979.
When Ayatollah Khomeini swept into power, he didn't just change the government, he totally flipped the country's identity on its head. The Shah's pro-Western kind of secular style was out. In its place was a revolutionary Islamic republic. And literally overnight, Israel went from being Iran's closest friend in the region to being branded an enemy of Israel and the little Satan.
And the change was so symbolic and so fast. Revolutionaries stormed that Israeli trade office, and then, in this just unbelievable reversal, Ayatollah Khomeini himself welcomed the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat to Tehran and personally handed him the keys to the building. Just like that, it became the new Palestinian embassy. The friendship was officially, and very publicly, over.
So you can see it right here. Iran's foreign policy did a complete 180. Under the Shah, the bad guy was Arab nationalism. Under Khomeini, the bad guys were America, the great Satan, and Israel, the little Satan. Iran's whole new mission was to export its revolution and back anti-Western groups all over the Middle East. All right, so now we get to the final chapter. The friendship is buried, but the aftermath? Well, it's complicated and full of some pretty incredible irony. You'd think that's where the story ends, right? Total cutoff. But nope. The story gets even stranger. Just 1 year after the revolution, a totally different war forced these brand new enemies back into one last secret deal.
Yeah, believe it or not, when Saddam Hussein's Iraq invaded Iran, the new Islamic Republic was desperate for weapons and spare parts. And guess who secretly started sending them what they needed? Israel. Why on earth would they do that? Well, it's that old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. For Israel, a powerful Iraq was a much bigger threat, so they helped Iran just enough to weaken their common foe.
But honestly, the biggest, most unbelievable irony of this entire story is the nuclear program. Okay, so Iran's nuclear program was actually started back in the 50s with help from the United States, under an initiative called Atoms for Peace. America literally gave Iran its first research reactor. And who helped train Iran's very first generation of nuclear scientists? Israel. Think about that. The very thing Israel now sees as a threat to its existence is a program it actually helped get off the ground. And that right there was the final nail in the coffin. As soon as the war with Iraq was over, Israel looked at Iran's nuclear ambitions, now in the hands of this revolutionary regime, and saw it as the #1 threat in the region. The old friendship wasn't just over, it was totally buried, replaced by assassinations, cyber attacks, and proxy fights, the shadow war we see today. So it all comes back to where we started, you know? Their entire alliance was built on the simple foundation of a common enemy. And it kind of leaves you with this one final question. In the crazy, ever-shifting politics of the Middle East, is there any conceivable shared threat out there that could possibly, maybe, ever force these two bitter rivals to find common ground once again?